Hey everyone, how you doing? Happy Friday. I'm back with another Friday Facebook Live. I'm keeping the streak alive. I apologize if you hear any background noise. There's my son is home, my wife is home, so other people are around. But I tried to find the quietest room I could to do this today. I hope everyone's week went well. My week was quite busy, as always, I guess. Uh, for the most part, it's pretty good. Enjoying some nice weather here in New Hampshire. It's been nice and warm in 60s, and so just enjoying being outside, being in the sun, being warm. Although today it's rainy and warm, but I'll take the warm weather, melting most of the snow. Doing a lot of cooking on the grill, which is awesome. Yeah. Um, Today I wanted to talk about a topic that I was thinking about, and it just came up kind of as I was writing a blog post that I'm working on. And also, I just heard someone kind of briefly talk about it on a podcast I was listening to while I was working out this afternoon. And that's the topic of eating seasonally. And I find that to be kind of an interesting topic because um, I think it's a hard thing to um, prove out, and it's not something people think of as far as being health related, but I think there could potentially be a little bit of validity to it. And basically, what eating seasonally means is that there's no doubt that our ancestors thousands of years ago um, could only had access to certain foods during certain times of the year, right? For example, if you lived right here in New Hampshire, where I am, and in the winter, in the fall, there wasn't a whole lot of fruit or vegetables to be found, right? So they probably didn't eat pretty much any fruit from from fall over all the way to springtime, and there wasn't probably much of the way of vegetable matter either in their diet. There was probably mostly fat and meat and fish and stuff like that. So um, is it so eating seasonally would basically be eating the foods that are within season, right? So you wouldn't be eating fruit in the middle of winter. You wouldn't be eating, squash and pumpkin and kind of fall time vegetables in early spring. You wouldn't be eating certain types of, tomatoes and whatnot in the fall time or in the springtime and stuff that doesn't grow that time, right? One of the cool things that I think about that's coming up here in New Hampshire is that we have these vegetables called fiddleheads that start popping up very early in spring and they're around for a very, very, very short period of time. And they're local. Like literally, I can walk outside my door and they'll see them growing on this right in my yard, pretty much. And they're quite tasty, but they're here for a very short period of time in the early spring, and they're gone, right? So you would only have access to them for maybe a couple weeks during the year, and they're gone. So um, the question that often gets brought up is if you should be eating seasonally, and if when you don't eat seasonally, if it's kind of a mismatch, kind of an ancestral mismatch. It goes against the way we've evolved eating over thousands of years, and could that have downstream health consequences? And most of the time, this is talked about in the context of fruit, and I think it's quite unfair because I think people are just looking for ways to demonize fruit because of its sugar and fructose content, and that being viewed as a negative thing, and that causes obesity. So you're eating a bunch of sugar outside of a time that you would normally eat sugar, and that makes your body want to store it more as fat. And I think there could be some maybe small sliver of validity to that argument, right? I think that certainly if you are from an ancestry where you had little access to fruit, for example, you were in Canada, right, in the Arctic, and you probably had little to no fruit, maybe some berries, right? That's where your ancestry is from. And now you live, in Florida, and you have access to fruit all year round. And you're consuming fruit, high amounts of fruit outside of like things like berries that are kind of maybe a little bit more sugary than normal for you in the middle of January? Could that be somewhat detrimental to you? Could your genes be less adapted to handling that type of food at that time of year? I can see that argument. I can see that. I tried to do a little Googling and some research on this, and there were a couple studies that popped up around leptin signaling in certain fruits, but didn't seem to be consistent um, across the board with all fruits, and it also was done in rats and not humans. So, while rats are a good proxy, they're not exactly humans either. So, I'm a little unsure as to whether it is, but I could see this seasonality argument being quite or somewhat valid for certain people. And at the same time, I think there's probably also um, certainly there are humans that evolved around this earth that consume fruit all year round as well, and certain foods all year round, right? So to say that we're not evolved to eat fruit in the winter kind of excludes everyone that lived at the equator where fruit was just growing all the time and they had access to fruit and they probably ate fruit 12 months out of the year. So there certainly are humans that can do that, and there are probably humans that can't do that. We're gonna be less adapted to it. I should say can't, shouldn't, can and can't, but just adapted, right? Their genealogy makes it easier for them to eat those fruits or certain foods all year round or not. I also think there's some argument to the fact that we obviously probably moved around quite a bit ancestrally. So as the months got colder, I would imagine that we tried to go to places where there were more foods available to us. So rather than staying in a place that was quite desolate in the winter months, we probably tried to move a little bit over to this is agriculture, right? We probably moved. We're called hunters and gatherers. We were a society that moved around, and we probably moved, maybe more south to get to places where there were some vegetables and fruits around that we could have eaten in the winter months, right? So I think that there's certainly an counter argument to that, that maybe our ancestors maybe did have more access to some fruits and vegetables even in the winter months, right? And like I said, this is primarily comes around things like fruits, right? You're like, oh, you shouldn't eat fruit in the winter because, it just makes it more susceptible to getting fat because we didn't evolve eating fruit in the winter. But we also likely didn't evolve eating vegetables in the winter either, but vegetables are fine too. So is it really the fruit or the vegetable, or is it just the fact that a fruit has sugar in it and that a vegetable doesn't really have sugar in it, and sugar has just been demonized, right? So I think there is certainly some validity to saying that we can handle fruits and vegetables in the wintertime when they may have not been available traditionally. And ultimately, I don't know if I have a good answer to it. I think that if you want to eat seasonally, I think that's okay with me. I think as long as that matches your goals, right? If you're an athlete who's burning a lot of calories, can use the carbohydrates, fruit is a great natural source of carbohydrates. And you're training in the winter and you need carbohydrates, like I think you should be eating fruit. um, because it's just one of the few natural sources that are of carbohydrates that when you eliminate them, you're kind of making things a lot harder for yourself. So I think if it as long as it aligns with your goals, right, and etc., that you want to eat seasonally, I think that's a perfectly healthy way to approach things. I also think that you can certainly do a little bit of easy testing to figure it out, right? Like maybe you test in the middle of winter eating a pineapple and see what your blood sugar does, right? Is it really bad? Maybe that's because you have genes from people that didn't evolve eating pineapples in the middle of winter. Or maybe you just do bad pineapples all year round. I don't really know. It could be one way or the other, but maybe you do fine with pineapple in the middle of winter, and that's okay. And so if you want to have some pineapple in the middle of winter, have some pineapple in the middle of winter. I also think, the last point I'll make on the seasonality thing is that there's certainly an argument also for um, the environmental effect of eating foods that might be out of season for where you're at, right? So you can make a very valid argument that flying pineapples in from some tropical climate up to Canada is has quite the environmental impact and maybe not the best for you because in order to preserve these foods, you need to pick them early and spray a bunch of chemicals on them and stuff like that. So there's another argument outside of health, just as far as the environmental impact of eating foods that might be out of season where you're living. That again, I think is a completely valid argument and should be considered when you're deciding what you want to eat. But again, that's a personal decision that you need to make, and I think whenever possible, you should be buying local, organic, um, you know, food from local farmers and stuff like that to minimize the environmental impact of moving food around from one region to the next. But yeah, I think that's a decision that you have to make. So I just wanted to leave my thoughts about eating seasonally. I think it's summary. I think if you want to eat seasonally, go for it as long as it matches your goals. I think it's a great approach to eating and could probably maybe have some health benefits as well. Um, that said, I'll sign off for today. I hope everyone has a good weekend, does something fun, um, do something with your family, do something with some friends. Feeling kind of just, I don't know, personally, I just want to be around other people lately. I just want to be with my family and not much else. But yeah, do something fun. Do something with friends, family. Yeah, get out and be socially connected. If you have any thoughts on this topic of eating seasonally, I'd love to hear them. Please leave comments below. Reach out to me via direct message or email or whatever. Carrier pigeon, I don't really care. Happy to talk some more on that. As I said last week, I definitely have a waiting list now for one-on-one coaching, so I'm not taking any new clients, but if you're interested, I'm still happy to talk to you and put you on a waiting list for when that comes up, when a spot frees up. So please reach out for that too. And if you want all this content delivered directly to you on a weekly basis with blog posts and videos and all this other stuff, please head over to my website at rjbhealth.coach and click the link at the top for the newsletter, enter your email address, and click sign up. And I'll be sure to be sending you all this stuff directly to your inbox. So you don't have to keep an eye out on social media. With that said, I'll sign off for the week and I'll talk to you all next week.